cue the 30 for 30 music again. What if I told you the best league in college football is also the whiniest league in college football? That's the story that we have today. What would the 30 for 30 be called? Sankey EC, the whiniest league in college football. We'll use that as a working title here for this 30 for 30. And by the way, the SEC is the root cause of all of their own problems that they are whining about here. It looks like most of the college football world has spent this week complaining, arguing on one side or another about Indiana. Poor Indiana, who just keeps winning and who just keeps, for the most part, destroying people, is taking a lot of crap now that they're sitting here at number 5 in the college football playoff rankings with 2 weeks to go in the regular season. A ton of people. I mean, the orchestrated SEC attack has come for Indiana. And when I tell you that, like, Pac-12 fans thought last year that the Big 12, that Karen, Overlord Karen from the Big 12 was pulling the strings on all these different voices coming out in defense of the Big 12 and doing her bidding and doing Brett Yormark's bidding. Boy, it's really felt like the SEC has done the same thing, and that Greg Sankey sent out the bat signal. And well, obviously here comes Paul Feinbaum. In fact, I think he would have been the one there with his finger on the button that Greg Sankey was pushing as well. They were pushing it at the same time. So, of course, he's there, but then you've got your Josh Pates. Ryan Russillo apparently was included in that this week as well. You got a lot of people caping up for the SEC and man, why is Georgia behind Indiana when Indiana hasn't played anybody? This G5 schedule, this is awful. And it's funny because it does seem like the narrative has really pivoted. The narrative has really pivoted from Indiana being this great story to now, hey, we're here at the end of the year and the SEC is going to completely come out with a coordinated attack on what's going on with Indiana. The real piece of this narrative has been, hey, if Indiana loses, they should be out. If Indiana loses, they should be out. If they lose to Ohio State this weekend, that is. Obviously, that's a massive game this weekend. If they lose to Ohio State, they should be out because the rest of their schedule has just been so bad. They'll finish with Purdue. That's obviously not moving the needle for anybody. Well, I would say to SEC fans, first of all, please keep the same energy for number 3 Texas. And I will give credit to Josh Pate. He has kept the same energy for number 3 Texas. But if we're going to complain about where Indiana is at and some level of Big Ten bias here, Texas at number 3 is there are a lot of asinine things in the entire top 25, but I do think Texas takes the cake just because of the significance of being at number 3 so damn high. When you've got to put up a graphic that says key wins Vanderbilt and Arkansas in the year of our Lord 2024, my friend, what are we doing? What are we doing with that? Joe Adams isn't walking through that door. This is not Bobby Petrino Motorcycle, Arkansas. The key wins are Vandy and Arkansas, and you got drilled by Georgia in your own stadium. Would have been uglier if not for fans throwing a bunch of crap on the field and getting a call overturned. That's who we're going to hold up at number 3. Please keep the same energy, SEC fans. Please do. But instead, they're all coming for Indiana. A great story that really should be pretty celebrated in college football. And I know you can push back and say, well, John, don't you always say the most annoying thing to you actually is the Big Ten because they get these cream puff schedules because they're always so top heavy? Yes, that is a perpetual annoyance for me in college football. You are absolutely correct. Penn State, the king of the cream puff eaters, the king Twinkie eaters would be Penn State year in, year out. But Indiana is kind of drafting off of them this year with what they're getting for their schedule. So, yes, the Big Ten schedule part of this annoys me, but Indiana is a novelty. It is the type of thing that makes college football great that they have risen up here, and they also have been killing people. They've been killing people. They've been beating basically everybody by 30. And when you've been doing that, I am much more open to saying, yeah, you know what? You probably should be in this 12-team field, even if it's going to be 11-1 with one loss to Ohio State, the one ranked team that you play all year. I don't think it should be a scenario where everybody is just coming in and converging on them and killing them. But this is why it's happening. Ari Wasserman really nailed this. And this, by the way, is a real SEC, Big Ten, big brand wonk. Like this, Ari Wasserman loves him some big brands. Loves him some big brands. But he nailed it. He said this. What's actually happening is Indiana is a threat to the SEC getting a fifth team into the playoff. That's when the fun stops. That's when it's not cute anymore. So now we're hearing a lot of Indiana hasn't played anyone comments, which have overwhelmingly replaced the fake cheers from expansionists who pretended to want this. It's very well said. That's very well said. And I would tack on to that. I mean, look, it's obvious. Yes, that is why this is happening. There is a Tennessee is the first team out, the way that the rankings are currently constituted. I know I mentioned Georgia earlier. I guess theoretically the real debate from SEC folks would be like Tennessee versus Indiana here, and it's ridiculous. Tennessee will get left out. Tennessee beat Alabama. How are they going to get left out when Indiana has this schedule? Blah, 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 blah. That's what we're doing here. And it's because it's really threatened the SEC getting, 4 playoff spots is not enough. They need 5. They need 5. And Indiana could prevent that. I would also point out what kicked off this latest realignment era that we are in. It was the SEC taking Texas and Oklahoma, playing divide and conquer all over the college football board. And they did it by taking Texas and Oklahoma. That started the dominoes falling that created an 18-team Big Ten and a 16-team SEC, consolidating the brands, but also creating such massive leagues that you're bound to have some teams that get really bad schedules, like Texas, like Indiana, because there's just so many mediocre to bad teams in a league that's going to be that big. You could have, like the SEC has, 6 to 7 like very good teams, but you're going to wind up with a lot of crap. You can have damn near the entire top 5 of the college football playoff poll if you're the Big Ten, but you're going to have a lot of crappy teams dragging down the bottom of that. They just so happen to get randomly generated into Indiana's schedule. That will happen every single year, and it's because of what those two leagues, but the SEC who started it, turned the sport into. Massive conglomerates with tiebreakers that you need to have like a doctorate to even decipher, and unbalanced schedules that are going to lead us into dumb arguments like this every year. So it is very much, I said the hot dog meme earlier, we're all looking for the guy who did this. Very much the SEC who has spent the entire week whining about all of this. They created this. They created the environment that birthed Indiana. The Big Ten deserves some blame too. Yes, I'm not going to completely absolve them of this, but the SEC started all of this. They created this monster, and now they're having to deal with something threatening. Look, like when the Big 12 complains about things, they're legitimate existential threats. This is not an existential threat to the SEC. This is whether or not they get 4 or 5 teams in the playoff. Cry me a river, dude. Cry me a river. What are we doing at that point? Why are we wasting our time and energy on that? And if that wasn't bad enough, now we're sitting here with the SEC and Big Ten already ready to change the playoff structure because of, again, something that they created, which is conference championship games not being nearly as valuable anymore. And you've had coaches openly complaining about it. So let's take you down a trip through Josh Pate's Twitter timeline here. Conference title games being devalued will be used as a reason the SEC and Big Ten overhaul the college football playoff. Again, I expect them to seek an AFC, NFC postseason structure. Don't even ask what this means for the rest of the sport. I think we could all kind of fill that in. It would be bad for the rest of the sport if that's the way that they're going to go. He says there's no chance they're about to listen to coaches publicly question whether playing for a conference title is worth it and not act. These plans have already been discussed inside both the SEC and Big Ten separately. Logic would indicate they'd seek to work together on it. So I guess the reporting aspect of that is like these plans have already been discussed. And he's saying that they will try to find some solution that would make this more like an AFC, NFC postseason structure. Always has been a risk. Always has been something that could happen. If it's not going to work out the way that the SEC or Big Ten want it to, they can take their ball and go home. They can tweak the rules. They can get rid of the committee if they don't like what the committee is doing. All things that have already been discussed. But we're seeing it, and we're not. It's November 20th. Like we've still got 2 weeks of the regular season left, and we're already in this mode where the SEC is so butthurt and whiny that they're wanting to move toward that because their coaches won't shut up about not wanting to play in these conference championship games that, surprise, are not as valuable when you create these massive conferences. You take away a lot of the regionality of the sport where it doesn't mean as much to have more evenly distributed conferences and be a conference champion coming out of there. And you have all these unbalanced schedules and weird tiebreakers and things that are going to make all of that in the sport just a mess and very uneven. You guys did this, and now you don't like the consequences. So now you're going to try and tilt things more in your favor, take your ball and go home, alienate more of the country. Boy, it is all just such like capitalism to a detriment, man. Just capitalism taking over the sport to a detriment. Not good. Not good at all, and it sucks. But it is here because the SEC is going to continue to whine. And I'm not even somebody that would tell you that the SEC is like a bad conference. Those of you who follow me on Twitter at JL Kurtz, as you see on the graphic, you saw that I tweeted earlier this week. I think all three of these things are true. One, the SEC is the best conference in college football. I believe that, and I don't know that it's particularly close. I think they are in terms of they've got like high-level teams up at the top that can compete at the top. And they have more depth of very good teams in the league, and they have less crap at the bottom. I think they're definitively better than the Big Ten. It is the best league. But point number two that is also true is that the scales are tilted in their favor. They have all the advantages. Big Ten too, but the SEC has all the advantages, and they're gathering more and more every single day. And point three that is also true is that they whine more than any league out there. The SEC is the best league. They have all the advantages, and they whine more than anybody else in the sport. That's what we have. That, to me, is the reality of all of this that is going down right now. So you can't come at me and say I'm an SEC hater because I will acquiesce to you all day that they are the best conference, and they have been for a long time. The SEC is the best conference out there. It doesn't mean that they're not whiners, and it doesn't mean that they didn't create this monster that they are whining about. All right, that's what I got for the SEC. Earl, what's going on, Earl? Thank you, sir. Earl says, John, BYU loses to both games. They lose to ASU and Houston. Wow. It looks like you're a BYU fan, Earl. Like that looks like Cosmo the Cougar that's on fire. Earl, are you that down in the dumps about BYU right now after the Kansas loss and the close call against Utah? BYU loses both games. They lose to ASU and Houston. It could happen. Obviously, I said they're an underdog this weekend. And, man, I mean, Houston is capable of beating a team that at least is of K-State's quality. They have been better, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. I would not predict them to lose both, though. I would not. So chin up, Earl. Again, assuming you are a BYU fan. It looks like you are. Maybe I'm assuming incorrectly. But chin up. It's going to be okay. I don't think it's going to go down quite like that.